Welcome back. You're watching To The Point. Earlier today, Dr.Manmohan Singh's lawyers moved the Supreme Court to quash the summons issued against him. But what are their chances of success? And were they right to go straight to the Supreme Court and skip the High Court? With me to give his opinion is one of India's foremost constitutional experts, former Solicitor General and former Attorney General, Soli Sorabji. Soli Sorabji, earlier today, Dr. Manmohan Singh's lawyers moved the Supreme Court to quash the summons recently issued against him in the Talabira coal mine allocation case. Do you believe they were right to go straight to the Supreme Court and skip the High Court?
Well, actually, Karan, there's an order of the Supreme Court, I think sometime in July 2014, which says that all matters, the scam matters and others, application should be made to the Supreme Court. So because of that, I suppose it's all right going to the Supreme Court. But for the order, normally it should have gone to the High Court.
But
now, I believe this is the order passed by the court.
So you're saying in this specific instance, the decision to go to the Supreme Court directly was probably a response to an order passed by the Supreme Court itself?
Yes.
Now, Dr. Manmohan Singh's lawyers have, I believe, raised three arguments for quashing the summons. First, they dispute the CBI judge's claim that Dr. Manmohan Singh showed undue interest in the allocation of this mine. They say that when a chief minister writes to the Prime Minister about a mine he considers one of the state's most valuable properties, it would be constitutionally irresponsible of the Prime Minister not to take interest and pursue the matter. Therefore, Dr. Manmohan Singh's lawyers say this was justified interest, not undue interest. Do you find that a convincing argument?
Well, not in the way it's put, but I don't think Manmohan Singh showed any undue favor. In the first place, he has no interest, direct or indirect, in Hindalco. The request came from the minister of a state which has a non-Congress government. So he took a decision after consulting and looking at various representations. After all, Paran, most important thing is, please remember that every erroneous decision is not synonymous with corruption. Unless the decision is so outrageous, so striking, that you feel there must have been mala fides, and that taints it with criminality. But in a case where you take a decision one way or the other, even if it's erroneous, it's not necessarily corrupt.
You're making
and in this case,
go ahead, please finish.
Just one sentence. Dr. Manmohan Singh didn't take a hurried decision behind closed doors in the dark of the night. There were representations saying, give it to what that NNC, Niveti, the corporation. Others said, no, give it to Hindalco because there's shortage of aluminium. Hindalco is more fitted, more equipped to meet the situation.
Okay.
So there it is.
You're making a very
interesting... It may at the most be an erroneous decision which is not synonymous with corruption.
You're making a very important distinction between something that could be erroneous but not criminal and wrong. In other words, someone could come to the conclusion...
Per se.
So someone could come to the conclusion that this was erroneous. That doesn't mean to say it was criminal or corrupt.
Unless there are other circumstances, unless the decision is so outrageous that no person would ever take it.
Now, in fact, this brings me to the second ground presented by Dr. Manmohan Singh's lawyers for quashing the summons. They say there is no illegal gratification. In fact, there is no quid pro quo whatsoever of any sort. Therefore, they conclude, there are no grounds for suspecting criminality. Do you accept that line of logic?
Well, actually, I think the CBI court itself has said, not attributed a criminal motive to Manmohan Singh. It has said there is no quid pro quo. And if that is so, then there must be some, though that's not necessarily mens rea, but there must be some evidence of criminality. You can't go on doubtful inferences and brush aside the CBI's conclusions. CBI is not final, but surely if you are going to disregard the conclusions, differ from it, it should be based on cogent material, not on doubtful inferences.
And therefore, again, you're suggesting to me that the judge may have summoned Dr. Manmohan Singh to answer charges of criminality without having that cogent evidence, because if the CBI couldn't find it, then where does it come from?
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to say. But mind you, I don't say CBI is final. The judge can differ, certainly, but there must be cogent reasons, material, not inferences, and not when you say no criminal motive, no quid pro quo, then what?
So, am I right, and I'm pausing here to sum up, am I right in saying that both the first two arguments being advanced by Dr. Manmohan Singh's lawyers for quashing the summons, firstly, that this was not undue interest, it was justified interest, and secondly, that in the absence of illegal gratification and quid pro quo, there are no grounds for suspecting criminality. Both those are grounds that you think are convincing in your eyes.
But only one thing, Karan, I may say, the court may well say, why don't you go and say this to the court? Why do you rush to us? It's possible. Okay, why do you rush here? May come clean, put your defense before the court, where the counter argument may be, why should one go to the ordeal of a criminal trial when there is no basis? You see, Karan, it's very difficult to predict what the Supreme Court will do. I can predict a winner of the Maharashtra racecourse with greater certainty than the Supreme Court orders.
Absolutely, and I'm just underlining the point you made, that the Supreme Court could believe the arguments being advanced, but simply say, don't ask us to quash the summons, go to the court, make the arguments there, and the court itself will come with the same response. Let me put to you at this point the third ground being advanced by Dr. Manmohan Singh's lawyers for quashing the summons. They say, because there is no evidence of criminality, and secondly, because there is no case of undue favor, this matter cannot be charged under the Prevention of Corruption Act. Do you accept that line of logic?
Well, if that's correct, of course it can't be, but then it has to be established. You can't just go on at the present stage. The only difficulty, by the way, we are concerned with the principle, not personalities. No one can ever dispute Manmohan's personal integrity, but that's not the question. Today it's Manmohan Singh, tomorrow it may be some other minister or prime minister. Question is, and this is where I feel the hurdle will be, court will say, please, don't rush to us. Go to the court, make your defense, make all these arguments and come out clean.
You're saying again a very important thing, Mr. Sorabji. You're saying that you need to establish there was no criminality, you need to establish there was no undue favor. When you've established it, it then will automatically follow that this case doesn't fall under the Prevention of Corruption Act, but that first act of establishing is necessary, and those could be grounds for the Supreme Court saying, don't rush to us, go to the court, answer the summons, establish this there, and the case will automatically fall. Have I understood you correctly?
Yes, Karan, but Supreme Court may, it all depends on the discretion of the court. It's possible it may say it, or it may say, no, we'll hear it. We won't let you, subject you to the audit of a criminal trial, we'll hear it ourselves. As I said, very difficult to predict what the Supreme Court will do and how will it exercise its discretion.
My last question, Mr. Sorabji, at the time Dr. Manmohan Singh was issued the summons, and that was, I think, around the 11th of March this year, independent lawyers believed that all Dr. Manmohan Singh had done was exercise discretion on good grounds and then, as a result, change the allocation. The judge at the CBI court level, however, interpreted discretion as potential wrongdoing, but independent lawyers said the Supreme Court judges would not jump to the same interpretation. Do you think that there will be that level of distinction in the thinking between the CBI judge and the Supreme Court judges?
Well, Supreme Court judges can't be compared to CBI judges. CBI judge will take evidence and then come to a conclusion. Supreme Court judge, I suppose they'll say, accepting everything that is stated in law, there is no ground made up for prosecuting her under the Prevention of Corruption Act. There is no criminality, it has not been found, no malpractice is attributed to him, it may be at highest an honest error of judgment.
My last question, and I know that this is the awkward sort of questions journalists love to put, and that lawyers hate to answer. But what's your hunch tonight? Will the Supreme Court accept and then perhaps hear and quash the summons? Or do you think the Supreme Court will say, no, don't rush to us, go to the CBI court, sort it out there? What's your hunch?
I can't predict, Karan. As I told you, it's difficult to predict what the Supreme Court will do. And I repeat, I can predict a winner at the Maharashtra racecourse in Bombay than what the Supreme Court does.
All right.
Will do or will not do.
Let me then put it like this. If Dr. Manmohan Singh is listening to you, your refusal to predict or even say what your hunch is, and your insistence that the Supreme Court could come up with any answer, might well give him a sleepless night while he waits, tossing and turning in bed to find out what happens tomorrow. But I thank you for joining us and for helping us understand the nature and quality of the arguments that we believe Dr. Manmohan Singh's lawyers will be advancing tomorrow. Many thanks indeed, Sori Sorabji. I'm very grateful to you. And there we end tonight's episode.
May I just end by saying,
yes, go ahead.
That I hope the Supreme Court will not refuse to hear him on that preliminary ground.
That's a hope, but not your hunch. I just underline for the audience that the two are different. But let's hope that your hope is the real outcome. Thank you very much for joining us. And there we end this particular episode. If you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.